To escape forced marriage, Millionaire kissed a poor girl, but what followed left him speechless. Before we dive into this shocking story of rebellion and unexpected revelations, don't forget to hit that subscribe button and activate notifications, and tell us in the comments which part of the world you're watching from. Your engagement keeps these amazing stories coming. Now let's uncover how one desperate kiss changed everything. Alexander Sterling stood at the edge of the lavish ballroom, his jaw clenched as he watched his father, Richard Sterling, schmooze with the Whitmore family. At 30 years old, Alexander had built his own fortune in tech investments, but his family's old money still came with old expectations and old chains. The Sterling mansion buzzed with Manhattan's elite. Crystal chandeliers cast expensive light over designer gowns and tailored suits. This wasn't just any party. It was the unofficial announcement of his engagement to Victoria Whitmore, a union that would merge two powerful dynasties and secure millions in business deals. Alexander had never agreed to this marriage. There he is, Richard Sterling's booming voice cut through the classical music. "Alexander, come meet your future in-laws properly." Victoria glided toward him in a silver gown that probably cost more than most people's cars. She was beautiful, accomplished, everything his parents had dreamed of in a daughter-in-law. She was also cold, calculating, and completely uninterested in him as anything more than a business transaction. "Darling," Victoria purred, linking her arm through his with practiced ease. "I was just telling Mother about our honeymoon plans. The French Riviera will be perfect in September." Alexander felt the walls closing in. Every smile, every congratulation, every assumption that this marriage was inevitable tightened the noose around his neck. He had spent weeks trying to find a way out, but his family's business empire was built on these alliances. Refusing meant destroying not just his own future, but the livelihoods of thousands of employees. "The wedding planner wants to meet next week," Victoria continued, her grip on his arm tightening. "We simply must discuss the guest list. 500 seems reasonable, don't you think? 500 people to witness his surrender. 500 witnesses to the death of his freedom. I need some air," Alexander muttered, pulling away from Victoria's grasp. "But darling, the Rothschilds just arrived." "5 minutes," he said firmly, walking toward the mansion's sprawling gardens. The evening air was crisp, a welcome relief from the suffocating atmosphere inside. Alexander loosened his bow tie and tried to think. There had to be a way out. There had to be something he could do to escape this gilded cage without destroying everything his family had built. That's when he saw her. A young woman sat alone on a stone bench near the garden's fountain, completely out of place among the manicured hedges and marble statues. She wore a simple black dress, not designer, probably bought off the rack, and her dark hair was pulled back in a messy bun. She was reading a worn paperback book under the garden's soft lighting, completely absorbed in her story. Alexander approached slowly, curious about this unexpected presence. "Excuse me, are you with the catering staff?" She looked up, startled, and he found himself staring into the most honest eyes he had ever seen. No calculation, no agenda, just genuine surprise at being discovered. "Oh, no, I'm sorry, I shouldn't be here," she said, starting to stand. "I was waiting for my sister. She works for your family's event company, and I was supposed to get a ride home, but the party ran late, and I didn't want to interrupt." "Please don't apologize," Alexander said quickly. "What's your name?" "Maya," she replied softly. "Maya Rodriguez. And you're Alexander Sterling. I recognize you from the business magazines my sister reads." Alexander felt something he hadn't experienced in months. A genuine conversation with someone who saw him as a person, not a business opportunity or marriage prospect. "What are you reading?" he asked, settling onto the bench beside her. Maya held up the book, a classic novel, well worn from multiple readings. "It's about second chances," she said simply. "About people who think they're trapped by circumstances, but find ways to change their destiny." The irony wasn't lost on him. Here he was, supposedly one of the most powerful young men in New York, feeling more trapped than this young woman who probably worked multiple jobs just to survive. "Do you believe in that?" Alexander asked. "That people can really change their destiny?" "I have to," Maya replied, her voice carrying a quiet strength. Otherwise, what's the point of trying? Through the mansion's windows, Alexander could see the party continuing. Victoria was probably looking for him. His parents were certainly expecting him to return and play his part in their carefully orchestrated drama. But sitting here with Maya, talking about books and second chances, he felt more alive than he had in years. Alexander remained on the bench with Maya for nearly 20 minutes, the longest genuine conversation he'd had in months. She was intelligent, funny, and refreshingly honest about her struggles as a part-time college student, working multiple jobs to support herself and help her sister's small catering business. I should probably get back, Maya said, glancing at her phone. Carmen said she'd text when they finished cleaning up. Wait, Alexander said, an idea beginning to form in his mind. Before you go, I need to ask you something that might sound completely insane. Maya tilted her head, curious. Okay, how much do you know about arranged marriages? I know they still happen in wealthy families, Maya replied carefully. Business mergers disguised as love stories. Why? Alexander ran his hands through his hair, destroying the perfect styling his valet had spent an hour achieving. Because I'm about to be trapped in one, and I'm running out of ways to escape. He explained the situation quickly. The family pressure, the business implications, the complete lack of choice in his own future. Maya listened without judgment, occasionally asking clarifying questions that showed she understood the complexity of his position. So you see, Alexander concluded, I need something dramatic enough to derail this engagement without destroying my family's reputation or business relationships. Something public enough that they can't just brush it aside and continue with their plans. What did you have in mind? Maya asked, though her tone suggested she already suspected where this was heading. I need to be seen as unavailable, Alexander said. Romantically involved with someone completely inappropriate by their standards. Someone who would make it impossible for them to continue pushing this marriage. Maya was quiet for a long moment. Do you want to fake a relationship? Not fake exactly, Alexander said carefully. I want to create a moment that forces everyone to reconsider their assumptions. Something that shifts the entire dynamic of this situation. With me, Maya said, understanding dawning in her eyes. You're perfect, Alexander continued, his words coming faster as the plan crystallized. You're beautiful, intelligent, but from a completely different world. They'd never be able to ignore it or explain it away. Maya stood up, pacing in front of the bench. This is crazy. I barely know you. And your family? They're powerful people. What if they decide to make my life difficult? They won't, Alexander said firmly. Because I'll make sure they understand that any retaliation against you means losing me permanently. My mother values family reputation above everything else. She won't risk a public scandal. What exactly are you asking me to do? Alexander took a deep breath. I'm asking you to let me kiss you. In front of everyone. In front of Victoria, my parents, the Whitmores, and half of Manhattan's social elite. Maya's eyes widened. You want to kiss me? Right now? Right now, Alexander confirmed. Before I lose my nerve. Before they finalize arrangements that will lock both Victoria and me into a loveless marriage. But what happens after? What happens to me when this is over? Alexander hadn't thought that far ahead, but looking at Maya's concerned face, he realized he should have. I'll make sure you're protected. Financially secure, whatever you need. I don't want your money, Maya said quietly. I want to know that you're not going to destroy my life for your convenience. I'm not asking for your convenience, Alexander replied. I'm asking for your help, and I'm promising that helping me won't hurt you. Maya was quiet again, considering. Inside the mansion, the party continued, oblivious to the conversation that was about to change everything. One kiss, Maya said finally, in front of your fiancé and your family. And then what? Then I deal with the consequences, Alexander said. Then I finally take control of my own life. Maya looked at him for a long moment, studying his face as if trying to read his true intentions. You're really desperate, aren't you? Completely, Alexander admitted. I'm 30 years old and I've never made a single important decision about my own life. This is my chance to change that. Maya nodded slowly. Okay, but we do this my way. No grabbing, no forcing. If I'm going to help you escape your arranged marriage, we're going to make it look real. Real? Alexander asked. Real, Maya confirmed, standing up and smoothing her simple dress. Because if we're going to shock them, we might as well shock them properly. She looked toward the mansion's bright windows where shadows moved behind expensive curtains. Are you ready to turn your entire world upside down, Alexander Sterling? Alexander stood up, straightening his shoulders. For the first time in months, he felt like he was about to take control of his destiny. I've never been more ready for anything in my life. Alexander led Maya through the mansion's side entrance, avoiding the main ballroom where the engagement celebration was in full swing. His heart pounded as they approached the crowd, not from nervousness about the kiss, but from the enormity of what he was about to destroy. The ballroom was a sea of Manhattan's elite. His father was deep in conversation with Victoria's father about merger details. His mother, Eleanor Sterling, was showing off the family's latest art acquisition to a group of society wives. Victoria herself stood near the champagne fountain, accepting congratulations from friends who already considered the engagement official. Second thoughts? Maya whispered beside him. None, Alexander replied, though his hands were shaking slightly. You? Several, Maya admitted. But you look like you need saving, and I've always been a sucker for lost causes. Alexander almost smiled. Even in this moment of crisis, Maya's honesty was refreshing. She wasn't doing this for money or social climbing. She was helping because she understood desperation and recognized someone who needed an escape route. Remember, Maya said softly, make it look real. It will be real, Alexander replied, and something in his voice made Maya look at him sharply. They walked into the ballroom together. At first, no one noticed the young woman in the simple black dress beside one of New York's most eligible bachelors. The conversations continued. The champagne flowed, the deals were discussed. Then Victoria saw them. Alexander, she called out, her voice carrying that particular tone wealthy women used when they wanted to maintain control while appearing gracious. There you are. We were wondering where you'd disappeared to. The conversations around them began to quiet as people noticed the unfamiliar young woman standing close to Alexander. Maya's simple dress and natural beauty stood out like a wildflower in a garden of expensive orchids. Everyone? Alexander said, his voice carrying clearly across the ballroom. I'd like you to meet Maya Rodriguez. The silence that followed was deafening. Eleanor Sterling's champagne glass stopped halfway to her lips. Victoria's smile became frozen and dangerous. Richard Sterling looked like he was calculating potential damage to his business relationships. Maya, Victoria said carefully. How lovely. Are you with the catering staff? No, Alexander said before Maya could answer. Maya is special to me. The temperature in the room seemed to drop 10 degrees. Maya felt dozens of eyes analyzing her dress, her background, her worthiness to be standing next to Alexander Sterling. Special how? Eleanor Sterling asked, approaching with the predatory grace of a woman who had destroyed social climbers for sport. Alexander looked at Maya, his eyes asking for permission one last time. She nodded almost imperceptibly. Special like this, Alexander said, and then he kissed her. It wasn't the gentle, hesitant kiss Maya had expected. Alexander kissed her like a man who had been drowning and had finally found air. His hands cupped her face gently, and for a moment that lasted an eternity. The ballroom disappeared. Maya had expected to feel nothing. This was supposed to be an act, a performance to shock his family. Instead, she felt everything. The kiss was soft and desperate and completely real, and when Alexander finally pulled away, she was breathless. The ballroom erupted. Victoria's champagne glass hit the marble floor with a crystal crash. Eleanor Sterling looked like she was about to faint. Richard Sterling was already moving toward them, his face red with rage. Alexander! Victoria's voice cut through the chaos. What the hell do you think you're doing? I'm choosing, Alexander said simply, his arm still around Maya's waist. For the first time in my life, I'm choosing. You're embarrassing yourself, Eleanor hissed, reaching them first, and embarrassing this family. Who is this girl? What does she want? Mother, Alexander said calmly. I'd like you to meet the woman I'm going to marry. The second silence was even more deafening than the first. Maya's eyes went wide. This wasn't part of the plan. They had agreed to one kiss, one moment of rebellion. Marriage had never been mentioned. You can't be serious, Victoria said, her composure cracking completely. Alexander, we have agreements, contracts. Our families made assumptions, Alexander interrupted. I never agreed to marry you, Victoria. I never agreed to any of this. Richard Sterling finally reached them, his face thunderous. Son, you will stop this nonsense immediately. You're under contract. I'm under no contract, Alexander said firmly. I'm 30 years old and I'll marry whoever I choose. Maya felt the world spinning around her. What had started as a simple favor was becoming something much larger and more dangerous. The entire room was staring at them. Phones were appearing as people began recording this social disaster. Alexander, Maya whispered urgently. We need to talk. Privately. But before they could move, the ballroom doors opened with a dramatic flourish. A woman in an expensive business suit strode in, flanked by two men who looked like lawyers. Excuse me, the woman called out, her voice carrying authority that silenced even the Sterling family. I'm looking for Maya Rodriguez. Maya's face went completely white. Alexander felt her stiffen beside him. I'm Maya Rodriguez, she said, her voice barely audible. The woman smiled, and when she spoke, her words changed everything. Ms. Rodriguez, I represent the estate of your late grandmother, Maria Rodriguez. I've been searching for you for 6 months. You've inherited quite a substantial fortune. The ballroom fell into complete silence as the lawyer's words hung in the air. Maya felt her knees go weak, and Alexander's arm around her waist was the only thing keeping her upright. I'm sorry, Maya said, her voice shaking. There must be some mistake. My grandmother died when I was 10. She was poor. She cleaned houses for a living. The lawyer, who had introduced herself as Patricia Hartwell, smiled gently. Ms. Rodriguez, your grandmother Maria was indeed poor for most of her life. However, she made some very wise investments with the little money she could save. More importantly, she owned a small piece of land in Texas that was recently discovered to contain significant oil deposits. Maya's world tilted. She gripped Alexander's arm for support, feeling like she might collapse. That's impossible. I would have known. Your grandmother was very specific in her will, Patricia continued, opening her briefcase and removing several documents. She wanted you to finish your education and learn the value of hard work before inheriting. The estate has been growing under professional management for the past 13 years. Alexander felt Maya trembling beside him. The entire Sterling family and their guests stood frozen, watching this dramatic revelation unfold. Victoria looked like she had been slapped, while Eleanor Sterling's calculating eyes were already reassessing the young woman she had dismissed moments earlier. How much? Maya whispered, though her voice carried in the silent ballroom. Approximately $47 million, Patricia replied matter-of-factly, plus the oil rights, which could potentially be worth considerably more. The collective gasp from the assembled elite was audible. Maya Rodriguez, the poor girl Alexander had kissed to escape his arranged marriage, was worth nearly $50 million. This is impossible, Maya said again, louder this time. I've been working 3 jobs just to pay for college. I've been eating ramen noodles for dinner and taking the bus everywhere. If I had millions of dollars, you couldn't access it until your 24th birthday, Patricia explained, which is next month according to my records. Your grandmother wanted to ensure you developed character and work ethic before inheriting wealth. Maya laughed, a slightly hysterical sound. Character and work ethic. She always said that money without character was dangerous. Alexander stared at the woman beside him, trying to process this revelation. An hour ago, He had asked a struggling college student to help him escape an arranged marriage. Now he was holding an heiress worth more than some of his own business ventures. "There's more," Patricia continued. "Your grandmother also left specific instructions about marriage. She believed in love matches, not business arrangements. She included a provision that if you marry for love before inheriting, the estate doubles." Victoria finally found her voice. "This is ridiculous. Alexander, surely you can see what's happening here. This girl orchestrated this entire evening." "I had no idea," Maya said firmly, turning to face Victoria. "I came here tonight to get a ride home from my sister. I had never met Alexander before an hour ago." Eleanor Sterling stepped forward, her expression completely transformed. Where there had been cold dismissal, there was now calculating interest. "Ms. Rodriguez, what a delightful surprise. Perhaps we were too hasty in our introductions." Maya looked at Eleanor with growing understanding. "You want to be nice to me now because I have money. Wealth creates opportunities for meaningful relationships," Eleanor replied smoothly. "Bullshit," Maya said bluntly, causing several gasps from the assembled society matrons. "An hour ago you looked at me like I was dirt on your shoe. My bank account doesn't change who I am as a person." Alexander felt a surge of admiration for Maya's backbone. Even faced with the revelation of her own wealth and the sudden attention of Manhattan's elite, she remained grounded and honest. "Maya," he said softly, "we should talk privately." But Maya pulled away from him, stepping toward the center of the ballroom. "No, I think we should talk right here, in front of everyone." She turned to face Alexander directly. "An hour ago, you asked me to help you escape an arranged marriage. You kissed me because you thought I was poor and desperate enough to go along with your plan. What do you want from me now that you know I'm rich?" The question hit Alexander like a physical blow. She was right, of course. He had chosen her specifically because he thought she was vulnerable, someone he could use and then protect with his own wealth. Now the dynamic had completely shifted. "I wanted to escape a marriage based on money and business," Alexander said carefully. "I don't want to enter another one for the same reasons." "But you told your family you were going to marry me," Maya reminded him. "You used me to blow up your engagement, and now I'm trapped in your family drama." Victoria stepped forward, smelling an opportunity. "She's absolutely right, Alexander. You've put this poor girl in an impossible position. The honorable thing would be to let her go and admit this was all a mistake." Maya's eyes flashed dangerously. "Don't you dare speak for me," she said to Victoria. "And don't pretend to care about my well-being when 5 minutes ago you were treating me like hired help." She turned back to Alexander. "You want to know what I think? I think you're all exactly the same. Rich people playing games with other people's lives, treating relationships like business transactions." The words stung because they contained truth. Alexander had used Maya. Even if his intentions weren't entirely selfish, he had put her in the middle of his family's dysfunction without considering the consequences for her. "You're right," Alexander said quietly. "I'm sorry. Should never have involved you in this." Maya studied his face for a long moment. The ballroom held its breath, waiting to see how this confrontation would resolve. "The question is," Maya said finally, "what do we do now?" Maya stood in the center of the ballroom, surrounded by Manhattan's elite, feeling more alone than she ever had in her small apartment. The weight of her newfound wealth felt surreal, but the reality of her situation was becoming clearer by the moment. "What we do now," Alexander said carefully, "is whatever you want to do. This mess is my responsibility, not yours." Patricia Hartwell cleared her throat gently. "Ms. Rodriguez, I do need to mention one more provision of your grandmother's will. She specifically stated that any marriage undertaken solely for financial gain would void the inheritance entirely." Eleanor Sterling's face went pale. The implication was clear. If Maya married Alexander now, everyone would assume it was for his money or social position, potentially costing her the entire inheritance. "So if I marry anyone rich," Maya said slowly, "people will assume I'm a gold digger, and I lose everything my grandmother wanted me to have." The will requires proof of genuine affection, established before knowledge of the inheritance, Patricia confirmed. "Your grandmother was very concerned about protecting you from fortune hunters." Victoria laughed. A sharp, unpleasant sound. How perfect. The poor girl gets rich, but can't marry into wealth without losing it all. What a delicious irony. Maya turned to Victoria with fire in her eyes. You know what? You're right. It is ironic. But at least my grandmother loved me enough to try to protect me from people like you. People who only see dollar signs when they look at other human beings. She walked closer to Victoria, her voice growing stronger. You were going to marry Alexander for his money and connections. You've spent the evening treating him like a business acquisition. At least I kissed him because I wanted to help him escape from someone who doesn't love him. You kissed him because he asked you to, Victoria shot back. Don't pretend this was some grand romantic gesture. She's right, Maya said, turning back to Alexander. I kissed you because you looked desperate and trapped, and I felt sorry for you. But somewhere during that kiss, something changed. The ballroom went deadly quiet. Alexander's heart began pounding as he searched Maya's face. What changed? He asked softly. Maya took a deep breath. I stopped thinking about helping you escape from something, and started thinking about what you might be worth escaping to. Eleanor Sterling stepped forward, her voice dangerously sweet. How romantic. But surely you can see the impossibility of the situation. If you marry Alexander now, everyone will assume. I don't care what everyone assumes, Maya interrupted. I've spent my entire adult life caring too much about what other people think. Working myself to exhaustion to prove I'm worthy of respect. Apologizing for taking up space. Making myself smaller so other people feel more comfortable. She looked around the ballroom at the assembled wealthy elite. You know what I learned tonight? Rich people are just as petty and cruel as everyone else. The only difference is you have better clothes and bigger houses to hide behind. Richard Sterling finally found his voice. Young lady, I think you're overwrought. Perhaps you should take some time to consider. I've done enough considering, Maya said firmly. I've spent 13 years considering every decision, every word, every opportunity, wondering if I deserve better than what I have. Tonight, I found out my grandmother believed I deserved everything. She turned to Alexander, her eyes intense and determined. So here's what's going to happen. I'm going to ask you some questions, and you're going to answer them honestly. In front of all these witnesses, Alexander nodded, sensing that his entire future hung on whatever came next. Do you want to marry me because I have money? Maya asked. No, Alexander replied without hesitation. I wanted to kiss you before I knew about the inheritance. I wanted to keep talking to you, keep learning about you. The money doesn't change how I felt sitting on that bench. Do you want to marry me to escape Victoria and your family's expectations? Alexander considered this more carefully. Partly, he admitted. But escaping a bad situation isn't the same as entering a good one. I could have kissed anyone tonight to cause a scandal. I chose you because something about you felt right. Maya nodded, appreciating his honesty. Last question. If I walked away right now, if I took my inheritance and disappeared, would you still blow up your engagement to Victoria? Yes, Alexander said immediately. I'm not marrying her regardless of what happens between us. You helped me realize that I'd rather be alone than trapped in a loveless marriage. Maya was quiet for a long moment, considering. The entire ballroom waited for her decision. Okay, she said finally. Here's what we're going to do. She walked to the center of the room, commanding everyone's attention. Ladies and gentlemen, you've witnessed quite a show tonight. You've seen a poor girl turn out to be rich, a rich man rebel against his family, and an arranged marriage explode in spectacular fashion. Her voice grew stronger, more confident. But what you're about to witness is something that probably doesn't happen very often in your world. You're about to see two people choose each other, not because of money or social position or family pressure, but because sometimes when you help someone escape from the wrong life, you discover the right one. She turned to Alexander. Alexander Sterling, will you marry me? Not because you have to, not because your family wants you to or doesn't want you to, but because you want to see what happens when two people build something together based on choice instead of obligation? Alexander's answer came without hesitation. Yes. The ballroom erupted in chaos as Alexander pulled Maya into his arms for their second kiss of the evening. This time there was no desperation, no rebellion, Just two people choosing each other in front of everyone who had expected them to follow different scripts. When they finally broke apart, Maya turned to address the stunned crowd. "I know this isn't how these things usually work in your world," she said, her voice carrying clearly through the ballroom. "But my grandmother taught me that the best things in life come from following your heart, not your bank account." Victoria stood frozen, her perfect composure finally completely shattered. "This is insane," she said, her voice shrill. You can't throw away everything we've planned." "Victoria," Alexander interrupted gently, "we never planned anything. Our parents planned. Our family's lawyers planned. We just went along with it because it was easier than fighting." Eleanor Sterling approached them, her expression unreadable. "Alexander, I hope you understand the implications of what you're doing. The business relationships, the social connections. Mother," Alexander said firmly, "I hope you understand that I'm 30 years old, and I'm capable of making my own decisions about my life and my happiness." Maya squeezed Alexander's hand, then stepped toward Eleanor. "Mrs. Sterling, I know tonight hasn't gone the way you expected, but I want you to know that I respect your son's intelligence and integrity. He didn't make this choice lightly, and neither did I." Eleanor studied Maya for a long moment. "You're not at all what I expected," she said finally. "I hope that's a good thing," Maya replied with a small smile. Richard Sterling joined them, having spent several minutes in heated conversation with Victoria's father. "The Whitmores are displeased," he said carefully. "There will be business implications. Then we'll handle them," Alexander said. "Dad, you built this company from nothing once. If we lose some partnerships because I chose love over arrangement, we'll build new ones." Patricia Hartwell approached with her legal documents. "Ms. Rodriguez, there are some papers you'll need to sign to begin the inheritance process. And given tonight's developments, I should mention that your grandmother's will includes a provision for a wedding gift." "What kind of wedding gift?" Maya asked. Patricia smiled. "She established a charitable foundation in your name, to be activated upon your marriage for love. It's funded with an additional $10 million, specifically to help young people pursue education, regardless of their financial circumstances." Maya's eyes filled with tears. Even from beyond the grave, her grandmother was teaching her that wealth was about more than personal comfort. It was about lifting others up. She really thought of everything, Maya whispered. Alexander looked at this incredible woman who had walked into his life just 2 hours ago and completely changed everything. "Maya, I want you to know that whatever happens next, whatever challenges we face, I'm committed to building something real with you. Not because of your inheritance, not because of my rebellion against my family, but because you're the first person in years who made me remember what it feels like to be genuinely alive." Maya stood on her tiptoes and kissed him softly. "Alexander Sterling, you have no idea what you've gotten yourself into. I'm looking forward to finding out," he replied. The evening wound down with a mixture of shocked whispers, grudging congratulations, and barely concealed social calculation. Some guests were already planning how to position themselves advantageously with the newly wealthy Maya Rodriguez. Others were speculating about the business implications of the broken Sterling-Whitmore alliance. But in the quiet moments between the chaos, Alexander and Maya talked about real things, their hopes, their fears, their dreams for the future. They talked about the foundation Maya would run, the business expansion Alexander had always wanted to pursue, the life they could build together based on mutual respect and genuine affection. "Are you scared?" Maya asked as they stood together on the same garden bench where they had met. "Terrified," Alexander admitted. "But it's a good kind of scared, like standing at the edge of a cliff and realizing you want to learn how to fly." Maya laughed. "My grandmother used to say that the scariest decisions are usually the right ones, because they require you to trust in something bigger than your fears." "Smart woman," Alexander said. "She would have liked you," Maya replied. "She always said the measure of a man wasn't how much money he had, but what he was willing to sacrifice for the people he loved." As they walked back toward the mansion, past the remaining cars of guests who were probably still discussing the evening's dramatic events, Alexander realized that he had gotten exactly what he had asked for, an escape from a life that wasn't his own. but he had also gotten something he hadn't dared to hope for. A partnership with someone who challenged him, inspired him, and saw him as more than just his family name or bank account. 6 months later, at a small ceremony attended by Maya's sister, Alexander's closest friends, and surprisingly, Eleanor Sterling, who had grown genuinely fond of her son's unconventional choice, they exchanged vows they had written themselves. Maya's vows included a promise to help. Alexander continued choosing courage over comfort. Alexander's vows included a promise to support Maya's dreams, even when they scared him. The foundation flourished, helping hundreds of young people pursue education. Alexander's business grew in new directions, freed from the constraints of his family's traditional partnerships. And every evening they sat on the bench in their garden, a replica of the one where they had. Medizwen talked about the unexpected ways life could change when you stopped following other people's scripts and started writing your own story. Thank you for joining us for this incredible journey of rebellion, revelation, and unexpected love. If this story touched your heart, please subscribe to our channel and share it with someone who needs to remember that the bravest thing you can do is choose your own happiness. Comment below and tell us, what's the biggest risk you've ever taken for love? Your stories inspire us to keep sharing these powerful tales of courage and transformation.